Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about tension and the full Floyd Rose system. I know all of you have had a huge headache at least one point in your life with a Floyd Rose floating system. I know I have. There's not a single person in this world that's picked up a Floyd Rose and strung it together and said, boom, that was easy. Nobody. So what I'm going to talk about specifically is where the springs come into this equation. So I've had a lot of tension problems with some of my guitars, especially one that's tuned to C standard, real deep. The gauge of the strings are 56 to 11 D'Addario strings. What I found is the spring setup I had was super dampening to like the sound. My notes wouldn't ring right. My really low chords were just muddy and you couldn't distinguish them. And then on top of that, the whammy flutters that I usually use just didn't sound right. They actually kept fluttering throughout the rest of the song. So I've played a lot with my spring setups on the back cavity of my guitars, and I've found that the amount of springs, the type of springs, and the actual orientation of those springs really dictates how those springs kind of level out the tension between the strings. I did a lot of research, and so many people were telling me it doesn't matter as long as the bridge is floating, it doesn't matter as long as you're competing against the tension of the strings. And so I kept using the same 3-spring setup that I had, and I just kept getting those muddy notes. So I'll show you what I found. So with this is my Ibanez Genesis right here. I got 3 heavy-duty strings from FU Tone. I threw those in this setup, and this is the one that's tuned into C standard. And immediately I found that my strings had a ton of tension. And so with this setup, I have 1 in the center and then 2 angled back to the actual bridge and then the claw right there. So this gives me proper tension. It cuts down on the length of the whammy flutters, and then it also makes my low notes sound a lot more clear. But the thing is, every setup with every tuning, every guitar, and every spring setup is going to be different. So this is a Dean ML. This is kind of my Frankenstein. I've thrown 2 pickups in there, messed with the springs, rewired the whole thing, got the fretboard refretted. But basically, this takes 4 springs. And then if you notice, almost all the springs are different. So those are different tensions, different types of springs, and different amount of springs as my Genesis, right? So in dialing in these springs, I found the correct tension for this guitar, which is tuned to D. And so lastly, I've got this Randy Rhodes right here. This is another 3-spring setup, but these springs are a lot weaker. They're not the red ones from FU Tone that are super strong. These are just stock springs that came with the guitar. And this guitar is tuned to E standard. And so the string gauge is a lot smaller than these other guitars. So these springs that are kind of just stock, no extra tension to them, these do the trick. But they also provide that good tension for other whammy bar stuff and the feeling. So the strings don't feel too tight and the strings don't feel too loose. So guys, what I'm getting at is springs do matter. A lot of people will tell you as long as your Floyd Rose bridge is floating and you have some tension on those strings and the springs are being pulled, that you're good to go. But the integrity, the amount, and the way those springs are oriented are really going to give you fine-tuning tension on those strings. When you have tension dialed in, you'll have better dive bombs, better flutters, and on top of that, the feel of the strings on your fingers are going to feel correct. I hope that helps you guys out. These are some of the things that I wish I was told when I started playing, so I'm happy to help out. If you wouldn't mind subscribing to my channel, I'd really appreciate it. It helps me make more content and more easy education. If you have any questions at all, just drop a comment. I'll get right to it, and hopefully I can help you out with that. All right, have a good day.